The music industry consists of the companies and individuals that make money by creating and selling live music performances, sound recordings and music videos of songs and instrumental pieces. Among the many individuals and organizations that operate in the industry are the songwriters and composers who create new music, the singers, musicians, conductors and band leaders who perform the music, the companies and professionals who create and sell recorded music and/or sheet music, and those that help organize and present live music performances. The industry also includes professionals who assist singers and musicians with their music careers, those who broadcast music, music journalists and music critics, music educators and teachers, musical instrument manufacturers, as well as many others. The modern music industry emerged between the 1930s and 1950s, when records supplanted sheet music as the most important products in the music business. In the commercial world, people began referring to the recording industry as a loose synonym for the music industry. In the 2000s, a majority of the music market is controlled by three major corporate labels: the French-owned Universal Music Group, the Japanese-owned Sony Music Entertainment, and the US-owned Warner Music Group. Labels outside of these three major labels are referred to as independent labels. The largest portion of the live music market for concerts and tours is controlled by Live Nation, the largest promoter and music venue owner. Live Nation is a former subsidiary of iHeartMedia Inc., which is the largest owner of radio stations in the United States. Creative Artists Agency is a large talent management and booking company. The music industry undergone drastic changes since the advent of widespread digital distribution of music via the Internet, which includes both illegal file sharing of songs and legal music purchases. A conspicuous indicator of this is total music sales. Since 2000, sales of recorded music have dropped off substantially while live music has increased in importance. The largest music retailer in the world is now digital. Apple Inc.'s online iTunes Store. History. Early history: printed music in Europe. Music publishing followed the evolution of printing technologies after the mid-15th century, when mechanical techniques for printing music were first developed. The earliest example, a set of liturgical chants, dates from about 1465, shortly after the Gutenberg Bible. Prior to this time, music had to be copied out by hand. This was a very labor-intensive and time-consuming process, so it was usually undertaken only by monks and priests seeking to preserve sacred music for the church. The few collections of secular music that are extant were commissioned and owned by wealthy noblemen. Examples include the Squarcialupi Codex of Italian Trecento music, the Chantilly Codex of French Ars Subtilia music. The pioneer of modern music printing was Ottaviano Petrucci, a printer and publisher who was able to secure a 20-year monopoly on printed music in Venice during the 16th century. Venice was one of the major business and music centers during this period. His Harmonices Musicis Odicaton, a collection of chansons printed in 1501, is commonly misidentified as the first book of sheet music printed from movable type. Actually, that distinction belongs to the Roman printer Ulrich Hans Missal Romanum of 1476. Nevertheless, Petrucci's later work was extraordinary for the complexity of his white mensural notation and the smallness of his font. He printed the first book of polyphony using movable type. He also published numerous works by the most highly regarded composers of the Renaissance, including Josquin des Prez and Antoine Brumel. He flourished by focusing on Flemish works, rather than Italian, as they were very popular throughout Europe during the Renaissance. His printing shop used the triple impression method, in which a sheet of paper was pressed 3 times. The first impression was the staff lines, the second the words, and the third the notes. This method produced very clean results, although it was time-consuming and expensive. Until the 18th century, The processes of formal composition and of the printing of music took place for the most part with the support of patronage from aristocracies and churches. In the mid to late 18th century, performers and composers such as Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart began to seek commercial opportunities to market their music and performances to the general public. After Mozart's death, his wife continued the process of commercialization of his music through an unprecedented series of memorial concerts, selling his manuscripts, and collaborating with her second husband, Georg Nissen, on a biography of Mozart. In the 19th century, sheet music publishers dominated the music industry. In the United States, the music industry arose in tandem with the rise of blackface minstrelsy. In the late part of the century, the group of music publishers and songwriters which dominated popular music in the United States became known as Tin Pan Alley. The name originally referred to a specific place, West 28th Street between 5th and 6th Avenue in Manhattan, and a plaque on the sidewalk on 28th Street between Broadway and 6th commemorates it. The start of Tin Pan Alley is usually dated to about 1885, when a number of music publishers set up shop in the same district of Manhattan. The end of Tin Pan Alley is less clear-cut. Some date it to the start of the Great Depression in the 1930s, when the phonograph and radio supplanted sheet music as the driving force of American popular music, while others consider Tin Pan Alley to have continued into the 1950s, when earlier styles of American popular music were upstaged by the rise of rock and roll. Advent of recorded music. At the dawn of the early 20th century, the recording of sound began to function as a disruptive technology to the commercial interests publishing sheet music. During the sheet music era, if you wanted to hear popular new songs, you would buy the sheet music and play it at home. Commercially released phonograph records of musical performances starting in the late 1880s, and later the onset of widespread radio broadcasting starting in the 1920s, forever changed the way music was heard. Opera houses, concert halls, and clubs continued to produce music and perform live, but the power of radio allowed obscure bands to become popular on a nationwide and sometimes worldwide scale. The record industry eventually replaced the sheet music publishers as the industry's largest force. A multitude of record labels came and went. Some noteworthy labels of the earlier decades include the Columbia Records, Crystal 8, Decca Records, Edison Bell, the Gramophone Company, Invicta, Calliope, Pathé, Victor Talking Machine Company, and many others. Many record companies died out as quickly as they had formed, and by the end of the 1980s, the Big Six, EMI, CBS, BMG, Polygram, WEA and MCA, dominated the industry. Sony bought CBS Records in 1987 and changed its name to Sony Music in 1991. In mid-1998, Polygram merged into the Universal Music Group. Since then, Sony and BMG merged in 2004, and Universal took over the majority of EMI's recorded music interests in 2012. EMI Music Publishing, also once part of the now-defunct British conglomerate, is now co-owned by Sony as a subsidiary of Sony, ATV Music Publishing. Genre-wise, music entrepreneurs expanded their industry models into areas like folk music, in which composition and performance had continued for centuries on an ad hoc self-supporting basis. Forming an independent record label, or indie label, or signing to such a label continues to be a popular choice for up-and-coming musicians, especially in genres like hardcore punk, despite the fact that indies cannot offer the same financial backing of major labels. Rise of digital distribution. In the first decade of the 21st century, digitally downloaded and streamed music, much of it illegally downloaded or streamed, at least at first, became more popular than physical recordings. This gave consumers almost frictionless access to a wider variety of music than ever before. At the same time, consumers spent less money on recorded music than they had in the 1990s. Total revenues in the U.S. dropped by half, from a high of $14.6 billion in 1999 to $6.3 billion in 2009, according to Forrester Research. Worldwide revenues for CDs, vinyl, cassettes and digital downloads fell from $36.9 billion in 2000 to $15.9 billion in 2010, according to IFPI. The Economist and the New York Times report that the downward trend is expected to continue for the foreseeable future. This dramatic decline in revenue has caused large-scale layoffs inside the industry, driven retailers out of business and forced record companies, record producers, studios, recording engineers and musicians to seek new business models. In response to the rise of widespread illegal file sharing of digital music recordings, the record industry took aggressive legal action. In 2001, it succeeded in shutting down the popular music site Napster, and threatened legal action against thousands of individuals who participated. However, this failed to slow the decline in revenue and proved a public relations disaster. Some academic studies have even suggested that downloads did not cause the decline. The 2008 British Music Rights Survey showed that 80% of people in Britain wanted a legal P2P service. However, only half of the respondents thought that the music's creators should be paid. The survey was consistent with the results of earlier research conducted in the United States, upon which the open music model was based. Legal digital downloads became widely available with the debut of the iTunes Store in 2003. The popularity of Internet music distribution has increased, and by 2012, digital music sales topped physical sales of music. Atlantic Records reports that digital sales have surpassed physical sales. However, as The Economist reports, paid digital downloads grew rapidly, but did not begin to make up for the loss of revenue from CDs. After 2010, services such as Deezer, Pandora, Spotify, and Apple's iTunes Radio began subscription-based pay-to-stream services. These services began to have a serious impact on the industry in 2014, lowering revenues still further. The turmoil in the recorded music industry altered the 20th century balance between artists, record companies, promoters, retail music stores and the consumer. As of 2010, big box stores such as Walmart and Best Buy sell more records than music-only stores, which have ceased to function as a major player in the industry. Recording artists now rely on live performance and merchandise sales for the majority of their income, which in turn has made them more dependent on music promoters like Live Nation. In order to benefit from all of an artist's income streams, record companies increasingly rely on the 360 deal, a new business relationship pioneered by Robbie Williams and EMI in 2007. At the other extreme, record companies can offer a simple manufacturing and distribution deal, which gives a higher percentage to the artist, but does not cover the expensive marketing and promotion. Companies like Kickstarter help independent musicians produce their albums through fans funding bands they want to listen to. Many newer artists no longer see a record deal as an integral part of their business plan at all. Inexpensive recording hardware and software made it possible to record reasonable quality music on a laptop in a bedroom and distribute it over the internet to a worldwide audience. This, in turn, caused problems for recording studios, record producers and audio engineers. The Los Angeles Times reports that as many as half of the recording facilities in that city have failed. Changes in the music industry have given consumers access to a wider variety of music than ever before, at a price that gradually approaches zero. However, consumer spending on music-related software and hardware increased dramatically over the last decade. providing a valuable new income stream for technology companies such as Apple Inc. and Pandora Radio.